What's up, T-Tam fam? Happy Sunday. First video of December. Today's December 7th, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Eric, and this is The Truth About Me. Episode 22. Sheesh. 22 episodes in. Maybe I'm getting it right, maybe I'm not. Today's episode is about negotiating value and how I finally stopped negotiating my value. Um, there comes a moment in your life when you stop bargaining with your self-worth, and that moment changes everything. And with that said, it's not about arrogance, it's about your identity, right? And it's about no longer allowing your value to be debated, discounted, or distorted. And that is something that I've learned um, throughout this process, throughout this journey, and how I used to negotiate my value, right? And I would take breadcrumbs or crumbs and as if they were meals because I wanted that sort of attention. I needed that to get me. I would tolerate inconsistency because I saw potential. That's another big one for me is finding out that I was constantly falling in love with the potential of that person and not the real person, right? Um, I would excuse behavior because of my love for that person. I would wait for someone to choose me properly, which, you know, really never came. Um, it did in glimpses in this last relationship, but it didn't last, right? Um, I would shrink to keep the peace. Why? Because I wanted everything to kind of flow smoothly, and you can't do that in a relationship. You have to have the hard conversations to get it all out there. I would explain my intentions while theirs were unclear because I over-explained. I would sit there and try and prove my point, and even though it was right, again, it was me just, kind of forcing that. And learning that it wasn't appreciated or understood because after I would do all the talking, it was moving on because instead of having them, give me their side of it, and I never got that. I would forgive things that wounded my self-respect, and that was kind of, again, love for me previously was something where I was, literally going to take a bullet for that person or jump in front of a train or lift a car off of them. Like, that's just how I was. And then kind of, one of the most important things was staying longer than I should have. Knowing, and that was really kind of within my marriage, but I figured that out towards the end. Um, so, with all of those kind of topics, that's how I used to operate within relationships because I wanted to be accepted so bad. And I felt that I had to constantly prove myself every single time because I wanted to show them that they were getting the best. They were getting all of me, and at times I will say I wasn't giving all of it because I didn't understand at that time. But I will say in this last relationship, I gave everything, absolutely every part of my being um, in this relationship. And it's the first honest relationship that I've had. And it's something that I'm going to take and use going forward. Um, now we're talking about the emotional cost of negotiating my value, right? And the toll that it took on me, losing my identity, cutting people off, um, losing emotional safety, doubting yourself constantly, feeling unbalanced, feeling undervalued, um, losing trust in my own judgment, constantly, questioning myself at times. In my younger years, I was very reactive rather than be grounded. I would hear one thing and then bam, automatically come back with something, just snap call type thing, and it wasn't good, you know. And then trying to, again, prove my worth over and over and over again. The funny thing is about negotiating your value, it feels like connection. To me, it felt like connection because like those, how I used to do things previously, that felt like connection to me because here I am putting my side out there, right? But it was actually abandonment of yourself because you were so intertwined with this person. You wanted to do, well, I wanted to do whatever I could to make sure that that person, had everything that they needed. That's just who I am. But in the same token, um, with that being said, it's something that after this relationship you have to, really evaluate, where you stand in what your self-worth is, in your self-respect. So, now I kind of get to the moment where, it clicked. And, after, after this breakup, um, unlike other breakups, this one I deep dove and, really kind of, put myself into a position of learning, growing. Um, and I will say it's kind of I had that moment of replaying everything and trying to see where I faltered, you know, where I took accountability, where did I miss anything, what did I miss if I missed things, and to be truthfully honest, I held myself 100% accountable in absolutely every single thing that I did, um, and then it kind of it went as more as I learned that it wasn't me because no matter what I did, whether it was right or wrong, it wasn't going to be enough. And that was a tough one. That finally was just like it wasn't, it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with her emotional capacity. Now, this is in this previous relationship and past relationships. To be honest, none of this mattered because my emotional IQ was zero. Right? It was zero. I can be man enough to admit that I was selfish. I was very selfish at a lot of times when it came down to it, and it was things I didn't understand. But again, with me and being the type of person that I am, why I'm put on this earth is to have people learn through me and see kind of the road that I've taken and what has been the outcome. And honestly, like in the beginning, it was more of a physical presence. I still wanted to do everything for my partners when we were together. Like I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. But again, it was done on a very surface level um, type thing. And whether it was physical, most of it, I'm gonna be honest, most of it was physical. It was something where I was like, hey, yeah, this is awesome. You know what I mean? But again, there's more. There's more to that. One of the benefits of going through this breakup is that's something I learned, um, and really kind of got me got me to think and got me to see different perspectives on all of it. And that's something like that I learned gradually throughout this relationship, and I learned even more after the breakup. So, that is one thing I'm thankful for, is that I was able to see me, I was able to evaluate myself, I was able to see, certain things, and it's made me a better man because of it, right? And now I'm working on my spiritual side, trying to get right with the big man upstairs with God, and that's a slow process. But being able to talk about things when I started this in July, you know, and kind of getting things out. I've learned so much. Excuse me. I've learned so much about that and about myself, and that's what led to the shift. Is I finally saw myself the way I should have seen myself all along, and I didn't, because love is blind. And even though love is blind, I didn't respect myself. There was a lot where I would just sink into a relationship and it was all for that person. It was never for me. And that's something that going forward is going to be changed, because, that I deserve that. So now we get into what stops the negotiation. And it's one thing where there's certain factors, and this is kind of prevalent in any relationships, is that what happens when somebody tells you you're going to break up. You immediately want to you get into the defensive of, oh, I got why, what's going on, what haven't we seen, what haven't we talked about. You go through all of those things and they start chasing. I'm not chasing anymore. you know I truly know my worth. I truly know what I bring to the table. And if that person chooses me, then they choose me. That's it. It's kind of that simple. Um, at the end of the day, I can't control what my partner is thinking or doing or wants to do. But in this case, she chose to, not be able to do this and walk away. And you know what? That's fine. That's her choice. That's what she wanted to do, and I let her. And was it tough? Absolutely, 100%. Because I am the type to not give up until I've exhausted all sorts of um, avenues for repair. But finding out after the fact that she wasn't built for connection, she was built for survival. And with that is, when it comes to personal repair, it can only be done by that person, like, no matter what you do. um, so keep that in mind, is that it's a choice. And if they want to choose to be with you, they will be with you 100%. you know um, then we get into not explaining my intentions repeatedly. Again, being you know an over explainer when it came down to certain things. I have to stop that. I had to stop. I will be stopping that. Because it's kind of like one of those, I'm going to say it once, twice, and that's it. Like, you're not going to get it over and over and over again. I don't see the point. Um, and then comes mixed signals. Me, I value clarity. If I ask a question, I expect an honest answer. And, you know, I don't do, I don't do the whole mixed signal thing. So if they can't come correct and tell me, what's going on or how they're feeling or this and that, then it's just not going to work for me. It's kind of like a non-negotiable. One of the big things is, with me being a Cancer, is absorbing other people's energies and instabilities, and I can't do that, because when I will, you know, I'm kind of like Atlas, carrying the world on my shoulders. Even though I can, I can't, simply because it bogs me down, and it's something that I can't fix no matter what I do. So that's something that they're gonna have to work through. So um, you know, going forward with that, again, that's just a non-negotiable. Not settling for almost. It's either you're in or you're out. You know, we either are gonna go together and work this as a team, and come up with resolutions and resolve, and repair and move forward. That's it. Like, and here's the thing: is shit happens in relationships. Every relationship has certain things that happen, and those that can't face the music and do that, then it's not the right relationship for you. I'll be truthfully honest. Is you need to find a partner who's willing to have those hard conversations with, accept those hard conversations with, not necessarily agree with the outcome, however, respect what your partner is telling you, but then come to a common ground of resolution so you guys can repair and move forward. Um, Not lowering my standards. Um, Again, it's something where I have certain things that I am going to want in new relationships, and I have to hold myself to those standards simply because if I don't, then it's just going to be repeat, rinse and repeat rather, and I can't do that anymore. It's not going to fly. It's not going to work. Um, and then also finding out if I have, like, if I'm in any sort of secular motion or having these cycles, and not having them repeated, finding similar woman who has traits of a past that I'm familiar with. I have to get out of that familiarity. I have to break that cycle, those patterns, because I don't want to repeat them because it hasn't done me any damn good. Then I go into, choosing peace over passion. And, when it comes to relationships, it's there is work. That 100% now, don't get me wrong. But it shouldn't feel like work. All right. But you do have to work within that. But is that person going to give you peace? Or are they going to give you chaos? Right? Because you can physically be attracted to somebody and you can have a great physical relationship, real intimate with your partner, without a doubt. But do they bring you peace or they bring you chaos? If they bring you peace, then you can have that passion. But if they bring you chaos, then you just, it's not going to work out. You're doomed to, have a life of chaos, right? Um, and then again, it's it's knowing your worth and choosing your self-respect before desire. And that's a tough one because again, most men think with a small head, not with a big head. And that's why conversations have to happen. Those hard conversations, because if you get it out on the table, then you know exactly what you're getting into. Now, will most women, excuse me, divulge 100% everything? No. Neither will most men, right? Um, but you really have to evaluate the questions you ask and the answers that are given to see if it's going to fit what you're looking for. And if it doesn't, hey, it's been fun, but moving on. So kind of really keep that in mind um, going in. So it's like, now, how has things changed when I stopped negotiating? My peace became normal, and that's one thing that I worked very hard for. Clarity has returned. I'm not stuck in the gray area. It's black and white now. Decisions become easier because I'm thinking clearly. My head's screwed on, and that's a good thing. Now my boundaries, they're automatic. Like if I happen to come across something and I see a red flag and it's part of my, you know, non-negotiables or my boundaries, then it's not going to work. It's that simple. Like I can't bend on certain things because it will ruin all of the above, which is the peace. It'll ruin my clarity, and I can't have that. I don't want that, right? Relationships, and when you get to this point, they become healthier, right? Because you're being able to get everything out on the table and having those talks with your partner. Trying to get your spirit aligned. How is your spiritual side? Now, I'm not saying everybody go run to your church. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna, like, I don't preach that. You know what I mean? You do, like, if you feel that's something you want to do, if you feel the pull to, become go to church and try to get your holy on days like today, absolutely do it. You know, um, I know it's not for everybody, and it's taken me a significant amount of years to kind of come to this point. But if one day you're sitting there and you feel that pull, you say, hey, listen, I want to check this out. I urge you to check it out, because it will give you something to, you know, move towards while you're healing. You know, again, self-respect, it's non-negotiable. Simple as that. Here's kind of a big thing is my emotional availability is I would, you know, now I'm very selective as to who gets access, simply because I've been torched before. I'm sick of being torched. So now that person has to work for it, which has turned me into the last part, which is unshakable. You know, and that's, you know, to kind of get to that part is by learning and growing and doing the work for yourself. Excuse me, and proving that it can be done. You just have to live it, breathe it, and do it every day. And that's in everything. I'm just not, I hope you know I'm not talking just in general, like just in a relationship. I'm talking about everything. Like, this comes into play on every single person you come across, whether it be personal or professional. Because when you stop negotiating your value, people start treating you the way you always deserved. And by, you know, getting that self-respect, knowing your self-worth, and coming up to a point that, you know, hey, I am doing this to better myself in all areas of my life. And that's what you got to keep on the forefront of your brain. And it's a slow process. You know what I mean? It's not going to be done overnight. Like, you have to put in that work. So you have to get your mind right, you know, and once you start, just don't stop. Just continue. Again, talk about taking small goals and set themselves for you. This is the perfect avenue to do that, is set small goals to work on parts of you to become better. I'm going to close this episode with a reflective message. I didn't get stronger by accident. I got stronger by finally treating myself the way I treated everyone else. With loyalty, with patience, with respect, and without negotiation. Think about that, right? Again, you have to choose yourself, because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. And even though you may have the greatest partner in the world, you know, there may come a time where it's just gonna be you. So that's why you always choose yourself first. Which leads me into the last part of this episode, which is, you know, your worth isn't a discount store. It's not the dollar store. Right? If someone can't afford your standards, they're not your person. Again, thank you for everybody joining and watching this. I really do appreciate all of you for, you know, coming in, watching the videos, and you know, taking the time out. And I hope that today's episode, you know, resonated with you in a way. If it did, great. If not, we got plenty more episodes coming. I got a special episode that I'm going to be dropping on, that's going to be coming about, about emotional dyslexia. And that'll be coming up in the beginning of the week. I may get that out either tomorrow or try to get it done by Wednesday this upcoming week. But we're at Sunday, first weekend in December. I want you know, I want you guys to enjoy it. You know, if you haven't done it yet, you know, get up, get after it, get to the gym, get to church, get your water in, get your food. We'll see you next week. All right, take care.